Hello, today we are going to talk about HTML. We're going to run through the W3 Schools HTML tutorial. So W3 Schools is a website, w3schools.com, with very good beginner tutorials in a variety of programming languages, in HTML, in SQL, in Visual Basic, JavaScript, CSS, etc. So let's look at W3 Schools, the world's largest web developer site. So for JavaScript, HTML and CSS, Python, Java, C#, C++, C, etc. The most I use it for HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and maybe jQuery. So let's go to the HTML tutorial. So it says HTML is the standard markup language for web pages. What that means is that this is the web browser Mozilla Firefox. It contains two parts. The first one is called the Chrome, which is this thing, this rectangle. This is the title bar, so it has a application icon. If I right click on it, I have the title menu, a title bar menu. This is the rest of the title bar with a title and minimize, maximize, close buttons. Then the next part of the Chrome is this rectangle, which contains the tabs. And then the next part of the Chrome is this bar, which contains the address bar, back, forward, reload buttons, the menu button, and then hidden is the menu bar, which can be shown by touching the Alt key on the keyboard. Pressing the Alt key on the keyboard again hides the menu bar again. And the rest of the Firefox window is what's called the content. So this rectangle. From here, including the scroll bar, down to the bottom. Okay, so most of the Firefox web browser window is the content, but then there's some Chrome. Let's ignore the Chrome and look exclusively at the content. So the content is actually the human readable version of the web page w3schools.com/html/default.asp. Okay, this is the human readable version, so it has something which is with large fonts, has a menu, has a search button, has a dark mode selector, has other drop-down menus, has a body, etc. A scroll bar, this is the up and down scroll bar. And at the bottom of the page, there's the impressum, about us, copyright, terms of use, disclaimer about the page. Okay, so this is the human readable version of the page, but behind the human readable version of the page, there's the HTML version of the page, the source code of the page. You go right click on the page and go view selection source. So this only shows what's selected. We don't want that. We've selected something in here in the impressum, in the footer of the page. Let's deselect everything by clicking anywhere with the left mouse click. And now we can go view page source. So if something is selected, when you go right click, it says view selection source. We don't want that. If you unselect everything and by clicking anywhere and then right clicking, you get another menu item which says view page source. So view selection source if something is selected. If nothing is selected, then view page source. Let's go to the view page source. So this is the source code of the page. It's not a human readable version of the page, it's a computer web browser readable version of the page. So behind any page that's human readable, HTML page, there's computer readable version of the page. This is for google.com. This is for w3school/html/default.asp. Okay, so when you learn HTML, in fact, you learn this version of the page, the computer readable version of the page, the source code of the page. So it starts with a new line, then less than, then exclamation mark, doc type all uppercase, space, HTML, and then we close this less than with this right than, with this greater than. So this is a pair, less than, and greater than. This is a pair, less than, greater than. This is a pair, less than, greater than. This is what's called an HTML tag. So less than something and then greater than. It's an HTML tag or an HTML element. Okay, then there's tutorial. This head element ends somewhere with this slash head. So slash head closes head. So all of this is in fact one entity, which is called the head. The same, after the head we have the body HTML element or HTML tag, and this body element ends at the very end of the page with the slash and HTML element. So this whole thing starting from line 1626, so from here up until the start of the body element is just one entity, which is called the body of the page. So all that is selected until line 1626, starting from line 153 is the body of the page. So the HTML page in this case has HTML, which starts on line 3 and ends on the very last line with slash HTML, which is the ending tag of the HTML part. And inside of the HTML part there's two parts, there's head and body. Okay, so this thing which makes no sense to the non-programmer user is the source code of the page, and this is the human readable version of the page that can be understood by anybody. It's just menus, buttons, text, and you can select or right click. That's all you can do with the page, and scroll up and down. Okay, so it says HTML is the standard markup language for web pages. So web pages have behind them a source code, which is this thing, which is the web page viewed as HTML source code. With HTML you can create your own website. If you want, you can create your own website. It is easy to learn, so you can edit a page in two ways, an HTML page, either in this version, the human readable version, which is called WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get, or you can edit it in this mode, in the source code mode. Okay, how to edit in the human readable format? You copy paste this entire thing in a Google Doc and edit there, and then you export from Google Doc as an HTML file. So you file save as with any name, but the extension should be HTML. We're not talking about editing HTML pages in the or web pages in the human readable format. We're talking about editing web pages in HTML source code format. Okay. So let's see a very, very simple HTML page. A very, very simple HTML source code, which looks like this. As we saw previously, doc type HTML, HTML which ends with /HTML, head which ends with /head, body which ends in /body. Inside of the head we have a title for the page, and inside the body we have h1, which is this thing, which is a chapter title, so header or a heading, and P is a paragraph, so this would be a paragraph. Okay, let's go try for yourself. Okay, so to this human readable version of a web page corresponds this HTML source code for this same page. So these two are the same thing. It's just this is human readable and this is the HTML source code version of the same thing. Okay. So we can put two headings. Okay. Run. Okay. So in the minimum minimorum HTML source code page looks like this. On the first line it has less than exclamation mark doc type uppercase HTML, and then we close the tag, the HTML tag. So this is called signaling that this web page uses the HTML5 standard. Okay, this less than is closed here with this greater than, this less than is closed here with this greater than, this HTML is closed with this /HTML, this head is closed with this /head, this title is closed with this /title, this body is closed with this /body, this h1 is closed with this /h1, this p is closed with this /p. Okay, next. Study our free HTML tutorial. Let's do it. So HTML is a shortcut for hypertext markup language. It's a programming language for the source code of web pages. Okay, so HTML elements say things such as this is a heading, this is a paragraph, this is a link, this is an image. A simple HTML document is the one that we saw previously. So doc type HTML signals that this page is an HTML5 document, so the content of this HTML source code page respects the HTML5 standard. Okay, pages start with HTML and end with /HTML, and inside they have a header part and a body part. Head contains things that can be seen in the web page, such as this title, Introduction to HTML, so the thing that's written in the web browser's title bar, Introduction to HTML, what's written inside of the tab, in the tab bar of the web browser, so Introduction to HTML. This would be the HTML element title, which ends here. This is the content of it. This thing is called the fav icon, favorite icon, this green W3, this rainbow G, uppercase G. The fav icon, the favorite icon, is also defined inside of the head. So things that can't be seen in the content belong to the inside of the head, usually. Things which will be displayed as part of the content of the web browser are part of the body section of the HTML file. So this thing. P defines a paragraph. So an HTML element or an HTML tag. In here it says that an HTML element is a pair of start tag, end tag, and something in between these two tags. So the start tag for head is here, the end tag for head is here, and this is an HTML element head. So an HTML element is defined by a starting tag, some content, and an end tag. The HTML element is everything from the start tag to the end tag. So this is the HTML element, this is the start tag, and this is the end tag. This is an HTML element, this is the start tag, and this is the end tag, which is shown in here. So there are HTML elements that have no end tag or no body, no content, such as BR, which means advance to the next line, so break, new line. Empty elements do not have an end tag. Okay, something that's really important with HTML is that the spirit of HTML, of web pages, is that there's no left-right scroll bar. So we have a up-down scroll bar, and then the rest of the page will reflow. Look at this part, which now is shown on 3 lines. If I increase the width of the web browser, it now takes only 2 lines. If I increase the width still, it's now shown on just 1 line. The idea behind all of this is that, again, there's no left-right scroll bar. You have one up-down scroll bar, and that's enough. You shouldn't have a left-right scroll bar, because the web page will change as the width of the page changes. Okay. As you shrink the width, the paragraphs are shown on more than 1 line as needed. For instance, this paragraph is shown now on 2 lines, and if we increase the width, is shown on just 1 line. And now it only takes half a line. So this half a line is with text and this half a line of line is empty. Okay. The purpose of a web browser is to read HTML and display them correctly. So this is a web browser. It takes a source code HTML document, which is this thing. And this thing is totally not understandable by normal humans. It converts it to this thing, which is totally understandable by humans. So browser receives HTML tags and HTML source code, but does not display HTML source code. It displays the human readable version of the page. Okay. HTML source code has this following structure. There's the doc type at the start, and then HTML, head, we close the head, body, we close the body, and then we close the HTML. HTML, we close the HTML, body, we close the body, head, we close the head, title, we close the title, H1, which means heading 1, we close the heading, paragraph, we close the paragraph, paragraph, we close the paragraph. So what's inside the body will be displayed in the content of the web browser. What's in head will not be displayed here, but will be displayed here. Title, here the title, here the fav icon. Okay, so HTML appeared in 1991. Is an evolution of another previous standard which is called SGML. Which looks like this, less, exclamation mark, doc type MOTD, less than MOTD, greater than, so really similar to what we see in HTML source code. So markup languages for documents. Linux doc is an SGML, docbook is an SGML. Compatible language. From the 1960s. Oxford English Dictionary 1985, shown as SGML markup. Less than entry, greater than, less than HWSEC, greater than. Bungler. One who bungles. Okay. So SGML is its own universe. SGML can omit ending tags. Or even more tags. Okay, and then another thing which is related to HTML is XML. XML extensible markup language from 1996 based on HTML. Extension of files is usually .xml and is really similar to HTML source code in the sense that it has less than and greater than, but it puts accent on being well-defined, well-formed. So it's stricter. XML is stricter than HTML. So HTML could be displayed correctly by web browsers even if you omit some closing tags. For instance, the web browser is instead of not displaying anything, will make the best effort to understand what the developer of the page wanted to say, and it displays as such. So it's very forgiving of HTML programmer errors, web browsers. Okay, XML self schema, DTD, XPath, etc. Okay, back to where we were. So the three standards, HTML standards that we care about are HTML 401, XHTML1, and HTML5. If we see if we see doctype HTML, we know it's HTML5. Okay, we try to use HTML5. If not, then maybe the next best thing would be XHTML 1.0. Okay. We can use any simple text editor because an valid HTML file is just a plain text file. So you can create it like this. Right click, new text file, a dot. Usually the extension is HTML. So we can write anything. Any plain text file is also a valid HTML file. Let's open a new window. We can drag and drop a file. So this is how a file created locally, named h.html, which is just a plain text file. In Windows, you would edit it with Notepad or a programmer's text editor such as Notepad++ or Atom or an IDE, Visual Studio Code, VI, Emacs, Visual Studio, etc. So any plain text file, as long as you renamed the file to have the extension HTML, is a valid HTML page. So an HTML page is a superset of plain text files. Okay. And now we need to refresh the page. After we change the source code of the page, we need to press the refresh, reload, Ctrl R, F5. in the web browser, so in Firefox. So what we can see is that in order to not have a left-right scroll bar, the displayed version of the human readable version of HTML pages, of web pages, don't have any new lines. Okay, so new lines, whatever new lines. Having the web page displayed on more than one line is handled by the web browser as needed. If the width is not enough, the line is wrapped, so text is displayed on more than one line. Let's see how it works. A really long line. Okay, we refresh. So what's missing is this thing, which is called the new line. So after the first dot and before the next Y, uppercase Y characters, in the source code there's two new lines. So the new line from line 1 to line 2 and from line 2 to line 3. But in the human readable version, everything is replaced with just one space character. So instead of displaying, there's no space characters in here. There's just a new line and then another new line. So these two new line characters in the source code are replaced with a space character in the human readable version of the page by the web browser. Okay, so if I make the width long enough, the entire page will be shown on a single line. If we make the web browser narrower, the entire content of the web page will be shown on 2 lines, on 3 lines, as needed. Okay, so new lines in HTML source code are shown as many new lines are all converted to a single space character. Again, in order to not have a left-right scroll bar. Okay. So Notepad in Windows. We are going to use other things because we're on Unix, on Linux, on Ubuntu 22.04. Write some HTML. Let's see. This thing. Control A, Control V. So it's just a plain text file with extension HTML. It could have text, so any sentence as it was in the previous version. That's a text file. It usually has the txt extension, but we changed the extension to HTML and it looked correctly in the web browser. But now we have a file which has the extension HTML, but we have HTML elements and tags in here. So this will be, if we don't have any HTML tag or element, the web page will behave as shown previously. So the entire text is shown in one line if the web browser is wide enough. If we have HTML tags and HTML elements, then this page is a HTML source code page, an HTML page, and the various HTML elements and tags will be interpreted in a certain way by the web browser and displayed. So when going from this HTML page to the human readable version, the web browser, after I save, Ctrl S and then refresh, does this thing. So this is not represented. HTML elements and HTML tags are usually not represented. Then the content of H1 is shown, and to it applies the H1 style, which means really large fonts, and it puts a new line here in the display in the human readable version, because a paragraph has different text style. So the font is normal, Ctrl 0. The font style is normal for paragraphs, whereas the font style for heading 1 is larger. So what it does here is the natural thing to do, which is have a paragraph be its own thing, which with its own font style, and have the header be its own thing with its own font style. Okay, so if you had Notepad in Windows, it would look like this. And we put the extension HTML or HTML. I usually only use HTML as extension. Okay. If the text editor asks you, do you want UTF-8, or if you can choose UTF-8, then choose that. In Linux, UTF-8 is default, so I don't need to select anything. So web pages, the source code of a web page should always be UTF-8. Okay, so either HTML or HTML as extension, there is no difference. To view the page in the web browser, I've opened the file in the web browser. So what I did is I clicked on the page, and then I'm dragging it over the web browser. The web browser refreshes. Or I can drag the page on the tab bar of the web browser. A new tab will be opened, which is the second tab. Now I can close, for instance, the first tab. Or I can go double click on this thing. Firefox will start. Or we can go right click, open with. Okay, and W3 Schools also offers a online editor. So inside this web page, we can see side by side both the HTML source code and the human readable version of the page. Okay. Next. Basic HTML examples. So again, we have this HTML5 prefix, and then HTML ends with HTML, body ends with body. Headings, which are kind of like chapters, go from H1 to H6. So H1 is the bigger in size fonts, and H6 is the smallest in size fonts. So let's see these three. Ctrl V, Ctrl S. I put a space in here. It does not matter, because the web browser sees this new line, this new line, this new line, and this space, and all of this, what's called white space, is replaced with nothing in this case, because H1's take the content of the h1 of the heading 1 HTML element. It displays it at the leftmost possible point in the page, and then it uses the h1 style. So we can go refresh. So again, this space is not seen anywhere. This white space that occurs outside the HTML elements. So this is a space which is inside of an HTML element, is in the content of the HTML element h1. Whereas this thing is outside of all elements, is inside the body element, so it doesn't really matter. It would matter if what? I don't know. Let's put an A in here, Control S, refresh. No. So A is not an H1, so these two are not shown on the same line. So it just puts a new line in here, and then it starts with a H1. Okay, Control S, refresh. So H1 has bigger fonts, H2 has a bit smaller fonts, H3 a bit smaller, etc., etc. Until H6, which is the smallest of them. So let's go like this. So we have descending 3 times, descending 3 times, and now we keep descending. 5 and 6. Control S, refresh. So it did what the web browser didn't know what to do, because the H4 tag is closed with H1, H5 tag is closed with H2, H6 is closed with H3. This is not a valid HTML web page, but still the web browser was really forgiving of my programming error, and it closed H4 correctly with an H4, and H5 correctly with an H5, and H6 correctly with an H6, because we can see that H6 is smaller than the H3. Okay, what do we do if we have source code that's incorrect? Well, we validate it. We search the internet for an HTML validator online website. Okay, and we copy the content of the HTML page inside, and then we go check button. And this says I don't have a long attribute on the HTML tag, HTML start tag, so I should have a long equals, and then the language, which is English. Control S, Control A, Control C, Control A, Control V, check. Okay, now it says that head is missing the required title, and I don't really have a head. So I should have a head and title. Head, title. Then we need to close title. And then we need to close head. Control S, Control A, Control C, Control A, Control V, check. Okay, it says on line 10, which is this line, column 22 to column 26, which is, this is column 22, and this is column 26. So this thing is wrong. Should so it says h1 and tag seen, so it's so less than slash h1 greater than, but there were no open tags for h1. So we can see that slash h1 closes the HTML start tag h5. So it caught me. Control S, Control A to select everything, Control C to copy, Control A to select everything, Control V to copy, check. So now it says that still it shows still 3 errors. So H2 scene, H5 scene, and H3 scene. So it's in fact H4. So start HTML tag is H4 and HTML tag is /H4. Control S, Control A, C, Control A, Control V, check. And now we're down to just 2 errors. So end tag H2 scene at line 11 column 12, line 11 column 22, same thing. So the HTML start tag is H5 and should be closed with H5. The HTML start tag is H6 and should be closed with H6. Control S, Control A, C, Control A, Control V, check. So it says document checking completed, no errors or warnings to show. So now the HTML is valid. It shows the layout of the page. So the structure of the page. So H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. But then the text is wrong. Should be H4, 6, 5, and then 6. Control S. Control A, Control C, Control A, Control V, check. Okay, so now we know how to create a basic HTML file because having chapters, having paragraphs, you can create like 80% of the web pages out there which don't have menus and lists and icons and images and tables and links. It's really important to get to this stage where you know how to create this file as fast as possible and as correct as possible. So the source, the HTML page, you should know how to create an HTML page that looks like this by heart. Really important. Okay. So what are paragraphs? I don't see why paragraphs were invented. You should just have text like this. It's the same thing. The p-HTML element and tag was created, I know, for styling reasons, in order to have one paragraph which is more indented to the right and one which is more indented to the left or something. To have one paragraph which is red, one paragraph which is blue. One paragraph which is Arial, one paragraph which is Times New Roman, I know. One paragraph which is centered to the screen and one paragraph which is justified right to the screen. I don't exactly know why P was invented. Okay. So this is the first checkpoint. We should know how to create this file by heart. Once we arrive at this checkpoint, then we can increase the vocabulary, which means more and more HTML elements. So the next HTML element is one used for links, what are called hyperlinks, or let's have a hyperlink. Control V, Control S. So the syntax is A. A means anchor, hopefully, and has two parts. So you open the A and close the A, the beginning HTML tag and end HTML tag, start HTML tag and end HTML tag. And then inside as content, you have the text that's going to be shown. Shown to the user. This is the text inside of the content of the HTML element. Control S, refresh. But then if you hover over the link in the status bar, you will see the link, the URL, the address that the web browser will navigate to if you click on this thing. So if you click, the web browser, Mozilla Firefox, will navigate to this URL or this web address. So https://www.w3schools.com, which is the exact same thing that we see here. Okay, and now we have the option to go back. So we're back at our page, which is a.html. The full path of the file is in my tilde, so my home directory, /work/daily/2022/Q3 for this quarter, and then the day and then the a.html, which is the exact same thing that's shown in the address bar of Mozilla Firefox. Okay, so we can use other URLs in here. We save the source code HTML, we refresh the web browser, and now if we hover over the link, we can see that it will navigate to https://web.de. And if we don't want to navigate by clicking on this URL, we can navigate by doing right-click, open link in new tab. So it opens in a second tab. The first tab remains a.html, our file, and then the second tab is web.de. Okay. So this is called an attribute. Attributes are used to provide additional information about HTML elements. So generally the things that are inside the HTML tags, the start HTML tag and the end HTML tag, are not words that appear in the human readable version of the page. So you will not see an A in here, you will not see an H in here, you will not see an href in here, because that's buried inside of an HTML tag, so the start HTML tag or the end HTML tag. But then this thing, this text, which is the content of the HTML tag, is shown as it is. So this is the text, is shown in here. That's why, since the URL is not shown visible in here, it nowhere says in the web page, in the human readable version of the page, if you look really closely, it doesn't say web.de anywhere. So that's why they had to put the web.de, the URL, the web address, inside of either the HTML start tag or the HTML end tag. And inside of the HTML element tag, there's almost always nothing. So in here, you usually don't put anything extra. But in the only place where you can put the URL is in the start HTML tag of the HTML element of type A. So how do you do that? So inside of the A, inside the less than and greater than, so inside the HTML element A, inside of the start tag of this HTML element, we have a thing which is called an attribute, this href, then equals, and then double quotes, and then this thing is the actual URL. So this is called an attribute, and in this case attributes have a name and a value. Name and value. So this is a string value because it's enclosed in double quotes. So this name equals this string value. Okay, and attributes are used to provide additional information about HTML elements. Okay, and very similar to links to the A HTML element, there's images, which is the img HTML element. So a lot of HTML elements have their names short and derived from the English word. So head is not short, is an English word. Title is not short, is an English word. Body is not short, is an English word. But then h1 is the short for for heading 1, and img is the short for image, and a is the short version for anchor, and alt is the short version for alternative text, and src is the short version for source, and href is the short for HTML reference or something, hypertext reference. Okay, let's save, refresh. So now it says that this image w3schools.jpg, if it exists in the same directory as a.html, will be shown in this page. Let's do that. How do we do that? This is the image. Let's save it. So we go right click on the image, save as, and then we need the path where to save. So we need to save in here. We copy the full path, Ctrl+C. We paste the full path and then press enter. Now inside of the directory where we have the source code HTML file, a.html, we also have an image which is called w3schools.jpg. We double click on it and it looks like this. Okay, so now because in the same directory 0725 where a.html is, there exists a file w3schools.jpg like this. It will be shown in the web browser. Refresh. Here it is, the image. If I put the mouse over the image, it doesn't do anything. But then if somehow the image can't be shown, like if I put a wrong text for the image, like QQ, w3schools, Ctrl+S to save, refresh. Instead of this image, which cannot be displayed, it will display the alternative text. So alternative text is when you can't display images. For instance, you can configure the web browser to never show images. So then, in that case, alternative text for images will always be shown. Or there are assistive technologies such as web browsers for the visually impaired that don't show images, because if you can't see anything, you can't read an image, but then if you can't see anything, you can hear text. So web browsers for the blind can read aloud the text of the web page. Everything is text, it can read it, but it can't read an image. So that's why such a web browser will read the alternative text, w3schools.com. Okay, so let's put the correct name for the image in here, Ctrl S. Now refresh, the image is shown. Again, if we just want to put a file name, not a file path in here, then the file with this name should exist in the same directory as h.html, which is the HTML source code page. If we want something else than just a plain file name, we can go with a relative path like dot slash static slash Ctrl S, refresh. It doesn't work because there's no inside of the current directory, which is the directory a.html, there's no static directory. Let's make one. F7, Ctrl W, enter. And now let's move the image, Ctrl X, inside of the static directory. Now if we refresh, the image will be shown. So this is the way to put images on web pages. Image tag doesn't have an end tag and doesn't have a content, because the whole purpose of the image tag is just to show images, not text at all. And since there's no text in the image tag, the beginning, the start image tag and the end image tag, and there's no content for the image HTML element, then everything is put inside of the start tag of the image img HTML element. So there's src, which means source, which says what image to show, and then there's alt for alternative text if we can't display any image, what text should we display instead. And then there's width and height. So it says this image should be shown with this height and this width. We refresh, now the image is larger. Or we might not put the width and height at all. Ctrl S. And now the web browser will do what it wants, which probably is to show the image not scaled. So with 100% zoom in its original size. Let's see. So the image is I don't know. What's the size of the image? .25 width and 34 height. Width 25, height 34. I can see them in here. Shift right click, same context menu. Okay. Next. What's next? After images, how do you view the HTML source? You go right click, view page source, or you can go with the right click and inspect, maximize to see something, and then the tab is called Inspector in Mozilla Firefox. The developer tools or inspect exist in all common web browsers. Okay, view page source in Chrome, view source in Edge. Which Edge? View page source. Okay. If we want to inspect an element such as this heading, we select a bit of the heading or not, and then we go right click, inspect. This says that we're inside H2, and this H2 has a height of 34 pixels, width of 947 pixels, a up margin of 19 pixels, and a bottom margin of 19 pixels. All other values are 0. And the fonts shown are Noto Serif Bold. (24 pixel), 700 weight. Okay. Let's close this thing. Let's inspect the URL. Right click on it, inspect. It says we're inside an A HTML element. Inside of this is the start tag of the A HTML element. And then the size is 23 for the text, 302 width. Again, Noto Serif, 16 pixel. Okay. What else? So you can inspect the entire page. You deselect everything and then you go right click inspect. It will select the body, if I see correctly. Okay. Or you can right click on something like this heading and you'll inspect the heading 5. Okay, next. HTML elements. So you can put an HTML element inside of another HTML element. So between the start, so this is the HTML element named HTML. So inside this is the body HTML element. It has a start tag and an end tag, and inside the start tag and end tag of the body, you have the start tag and end tag of h1, and and this is the content of the h1 HTML element. So you can have things like an image inside an A, like how? Let's see. Control C, Control X, Control V, Control S, refresh. So now if I click on the image W3 schools, it will navigate to web.de like this. So this is part of the link, the text, but also the image is now part of the text, because I put the image inside of the A HTML tag, which is for links to other web pages or to other elements inside of this page. for navigating. Okay. Never skip the end tag. Again, we talked about this. This will be displayed correctly by the web browser, but if we run an HTML validator, the HTML validator will say you didn't close, you have no end tag for this start tag, you have no end tag for this start tag. And again, it will complain that you don't have a doc type HTML, you don't have an HTML, you don't have a long EN, you don't have a title and head. So all these 1, 2, 3 are validation errors by the validator that I just used. The validator is validate HTML is validator.w3.org. Okay. So there's HTML elements that don't have an end tag and don't have a content, like BR. BR is maybe the most important in this category, that doesn't have content and end tag. And any other attributes inside of the start tag. This is for new lines. If you really want the web page to advance to a new line, if you don't want to depend on the behavior of the web browser that does these things, that automatically wraps lines. If you say, okay, we really need 2 new lines between this is heading 5 and this is heading 6, then that's what we do. Heading 5, heading 6. We put BR tags, which is, I don't know, the unconditional break line. Control S, F5, and now there's one new line and the second new line between heading 5 and heading 6. HTML element that you use really often. Okay, HTML is not case sensitive, so it's case insensitive, and you could use P uppercase or P lowercase for the start tag of the P HTML element. I always go lowercase. Lowercase is mandatory in XHTML1, is recommended in HTML. Always use lowercase tag names. Okay, so H1 to H6, body and HTML. You can find online all of the valid HTML elements and tags. Lists that look like this. So I know 80% of these you will never use, so it's not that important to know about them. But maybe to know that it exists is a good thing. Okay. So I never used WBR, I never used var, I never used U, I never used TT, I never used track, I did use TR, I did use title, I never used time, I never used thead, I used th, I never used tfoot, I never used text area, I never used template, I did use td, never used tbody, did use a table, did not use svg or soup or summary or sub, I did use style, I never used strong, strike, source, select, yes, I did use select. I never used section, I did use script, I never used sample, I didn't use S, Ruby, I didn't use RT, RP, I didn't use progress. I never used progress. I used pre, never used pictures, param, did use p, did not use this thing, output. I did use option, did use OL, did not use object, did not use no frames, nav, meter, no script, did use meta, not mark, not map, not main, not link, yes li, no legend, no label, no keyboard, no ins, yes input, yes image, no I, yes HTML, yes HR, yes head, no header, yes h1 to h6, no frame set, no frame, yes form, no footer, no font, no figure, fig caption, field set, embed, em, dt, dl, yes div, not dir, not dialog, not dfn, details, del, dd, data list, data call, group call, yes code, no site, no center, caption, no canvas, yes button, yes br, yes body, no block quote, no big, no video, bdi, base font, no base, no b, no audio, no aside article area, no applet, no address, no acronym, yes abr, yes a, yes doc type. Okay, next. HTML attributes are usually part of the start tag in pairs like this. So name equals value. Name value pairs, name equal value with double quotes. Always specified in the start tag. Things that are not text to be shown in the human readable version of the page. So this is the src attribute for AMG. This is called a file name. The file should exist in the same directory as the HTML page. There's absolute links like this, or https :/ blah blah, or file : / full path, or might be relative paths like /images. / means root, so go to the root of the website, find the directory images, inside find the file image girl. This is just a file name. If it begins with /, it's relative to the domain, so it starts at /. Or it could start with dot, which is the current directory. So we can go, as we did, image src dot / static, which is the name of the directory in the same directory as h.html, and then in there we have the file name. So paths are, this is a path, this is a path, this is a path, whereas file name doesn't contain any slashes. It is almost always best to use relative URLs. This way you will be able to migrate the website like to another domain, to have it work correctly if you load it from file protocol or from HTTPS protocol, or you can move it inside of a website. So you can move this site from /html to /shtml if you want. So you can rename part of the URL, but the website will continue to work correctly. If you're using correct relative URLs. Okay, and this relative to the domain is also very interesting, the /1. Okay, width and height. Images should have such a thing in pixels. Specify the height and width in pixels. So what's a pixel? I don't know. What is a pixel? Is a dot that's shown on the monitor. So this thing is a pixel. A pair of RGB, red, green, blue, is a pixel. These three things. Open image in new tab. A pixel is this red line, this green line, and this blue line. These three vertical lines form a pair that's called a pixel. Three vertical lines, one pair, one pixel. Okay, this is how it looks like physically in the hardware of the monitor. And if you don't look like this, you say, what color does my pixel have? Then a pixel is a rectangle that has one color overall. So a rectangle, a square that has just one color. You can't show more than one color inside of a pixel. Okay, so in GIMP, in an image editor, that things look like this. Let's make a screenshot. Okay, let's select the part in here, Ctrl C from clipboard. And now pixel is the thing that remains a square with just one, a rectangle with just one color, no matter how much you zoom in. So we zoom in with Ctrl and the mouse scroll. So this is a pixel, this thing. No matter how much I scroll, it's still a rectangle and still has just one color in it. So if I go with the select tool, I can select one pixel, but I can't select less than one pixel. Okay, so a pixel is similar to the atom in chemistry. So you can't go deeper in chemistry than the atom. You can go deeper in physics, but not in chemistry. Okay, that's the smallest amount that we have on a monitor inside of an image, a pixel. Okay, so what else was there? Alt attribute is alternate text if the image can't be shown. And as I tried with an image that doesn't exist, it's going to show the alternate text when the image can't be displayed. So it says girl with a jacket instead of the image. Whereas if you put the image, so I put an image that exists, hopefully, and now the image is shown, not the alternative text. Okay. Style attribute is if you want to apply CSS, which is this chapter, onto something. So I'm guessing that's why the P HTML element was invented, just to apply style on it. So we want to apply a style to this P HTML element. We're finding its start HTML tag, which is the P without a slash. This is the end tag. This is start tag. Inside we put pairs of names equals value, so attributes. So we say the style of this paragraph, the font of this paragraph. Let's see how that looks like. So we say that the font which is used for this is a paragraph with a line break was black, right? This is a paragraph with a line break. And now we're trying to change the color of the font to red. So you can Control S to save and then refresh. So the entire paragraph text now is red. If we go inspect, we can see that it says, if we can see anything, it says that the element inline has a style, which is this thing, style, with this pair, color and then red, color red. We can change the color to blue if we want. And now the paragraph is blue. We can change anything we want, but it will not persist. So whatever we do inside of the inspector affects the display version, the human readable version of the page, not the HTML source code. Okay, so if we want to keep the HTML source code as it is, but we want to change in various ways the displayed form, the human readable version of the page, then the inspector is the place to do it. So I know we can go with, let's have this H2. How do we do that? So we go H2, style equals color, colon, yellow. Okay, enter. Control Z. This thing. Okay, so now heading 2 is yellow. If we select it, we can see the HTML source code that we edited, but then again, it wasn't saved to the disk. H2 is still looks like this in a.html. This is just a version of the HTML source code that's visible inside of the web browser. This was never saved to the hard disk, and when we close the inspector and we refresh, everything is back to normal. The HTML source code that's inside of a.html was loaded inside of the web browser and then displayed. So the web browser does two steps. It reads this thing, the content of the HTML file, which it loads in here in the HTML version of the page, and then that thing gets rendered or displayed or transformed to human readable format. But then without editing the source code on the hard disk, you can edit the HTML source code that's stored inside of the web browser. You can go edit everything you want in here, and now the HTML source code that's loaded inside the web browser is different than the HTML source code that's inside of the original HTML file that was loaded in the web browser. So now there's a delta, a difference between this and this. really rarely what's shown inside of the inspector is identical to what's on the hard disk. Most of the times this HTML source code differs from this HTML source code, because websites usually have source code that edit these HTML elements in various ways, and that's commonly done using JavaScript. That's what's called dynamic web pages, because at load time they look in a certain way, and a millisecond after they look in a different way, because the source code that's loaded from the web page is immediately changed to something else, to another version of the source code. Okay, so if you want to know, let's load the page inside of the web browser and let's see what if. What if we change this h2 to something else, to h... Where are you? Right click, edit HTML. What if we change it to h4? What would it happen, you know? So, like a draft. You could have your draft version of the page inside of the web browser's inspector. It looks like this. So heading 2 now is way smaller fonts. If you like it, you could copy this HTML source code to the source code file, to a.html. If not, it's just easy to just go refresh, and the source code from a.html will be loaded again in the web browser. That's why it's not enough to just edit the HTML web page, the file a.html, and save it. The web browser will not know that it needs to put new things from here to here. That's why you have the refresh button to tell the web browser whatever you have in your HTML view is old, and you should load again the content of a.html in here inside of the web browser's HTML source code view. So there's editing this, or seeing here. There's ways to edit just this and see it here, and there's ways to edit just here and not seeing it neither here nor here, because you don't refresh the web browser page. Okay. What else is there? The lang attribute is mandatory for the HTML tag and should have the text en, because all of the web pages that we make are English. We could say English, but the type for the United States. That's a good thing to do. The title attribute can be displayed, can be added to a P to have a tooltip when you hover over an element. I never did such a thing. I never had tooltips on when you hover on with your mouse on things. Always use lowercase attributes, yes. Okay, always put double quotes for the value of attributes. Okay, single or double quotes. 99% of times you have double quotes, but if you have single quotes in them, inside of the string, that's the value of the attribute, you might go with putting the string inside of single quotes, and then if you have double quotes in your string, the string will not break. Okay. So most A's have href, most IMGs have src with height im alt. Style can be put on any other HTML element. Lang is an attribute for HTML. I don't want to do tooltips. Headings, heading from 1 to 6. We did this. Headings are important because they are used for table of contents, for search engines, when you generate PDFs, when printing, if you want to collapse an entire H header. Okay. If you don't like the default style of a thing, so when you say H1, this is heading 1, you let the web browser style H1 the way it wants. So Mozilla Firefox will have its default way to style H1s. Google Chrome will have other default ways of presenting H1s. So if you don't want to have your page look different in different web browsers, you will have to specify how H1s need to look like. So you can do things like this. You put a style HTML attribute inside of the start tag of the H1 HTML element. And now all web browsers will be forced to display font size 60. But then web browsers will use their default font for H1. So this thing will still look different in Mozilla Firefox versus Google Chrome, because Mozilla Firefox will show this as font serif Noto sans, and the Noto serif, and then Google Chrome, who knows what font will use, what font family. Okay. Next, we have P's. Again, P's I'm guessing are just for, I don't know, for putting a bit of space between P's and putting styles on P's. So when you say P and end P, this in the content of the HTML element will be shown on just one line if possible, but different P's will use different lines. So this P is shown on a single line in here. This P is shown on a single line in here, and there's a new line between them. So you could use P's in order to specify that there must be a new line between these two paragraphs of text. Okay, so web browser removes any extra spaces and new lines and replaces them with just one space and does the correct thing. Because in this example, the source code contains a ton of space between contains and A. In here, all of that white space, a ton of spaces, will be replaced with just one space in the human readable version. So yes, the HTML source code has many spaces, but the human readable version has just one space. And then after source and code, there's a ton of spaces in the HTML version, but in the human readable version is just one space. And between the and browser, there's a ton of spaces, and in the human readable version is just one space. And in here is a new line, and this new line is replaced with a space between paragraph and contains. In the human readable version is a space. In the HTML version, it's a new line in here. So the new line between line 29 and 30. How do we use non-printable? How do we show non-printable characters? I don't know. Okay, so there should be a way to specify to the text editor, show me new lines. Display the new lines. Okay. So because there's the same web page can be displayed on an iPhone or on an iPad or on a TV screen. So screen sizes differ, screen resolutions differ, color depths differ, so 32-bit or they could be with less colors or with 10-bit colors, or the DPIs could differ, dots per inch. So you don't really know, and the zoom level of the page can differ. You can zoom inside of the page, you can go like this. So that's why it's better to leave the web browser to reflow the page and show a paragraph on many pages as needed, on many lines as needed. Okay. The browser will remove automatically any extra spaces and lines. If you put a ton of spaces, those will not be displayed. If you put a lot of new lines, those will not be displayed. Okay, and then there's this thing which is a horizontal rule, which shows a horizontal line between the two P's in this case, so this horizontal line. I can select it, right click and inspect. No, I didn't touch it. I can't touch it. Okay, so it's this gray horizontal line. Okay, line breaks, again, you put as many BRs as you want if you really want a new line. Okay, so all new lines will be not displayed. So it will be showing in a single line the entire HTML content of the HTML element P. Okay, or we can replace the P with a PRE, which will keep your format as is. Control S and then refresh. But it will use monospaced fonts. Displaced in a fixed width font, preserves spaces and line breaks as you put them. Pre-formatted text. This is usually used for having inside of a web page source code, programming source code, I don't know, from the programming language C++, for instance. Okay. Next, styles. With styles you use this thing which is CSS to change font color, font background color, font name, font style, for instance, to be bold or italic or underline. What else? If a line should be dotted, if the font should be left aligned 15 characters, 15 pixels, if a dotted line should be shown outside around a text, for instance. So it deals with what's called the box model and fonts. That's what and colors, that's what you usually primarily use it for. So there's inside of the attribute's name is style, should appear just once inside of the start HTML tag, and the value of the tag is something colon something and semicolon, and then something colon something semicolon, etc., etc., etc. Could be really long, this part. So this is called CSS syntax, and this is called attribute syntax. So this part is HTML programming language, this part is another programming language which is called CSS. Okay. So there's background color. If you want to edit to change the color of a font, you use color. In order to change the background color for the font, you go background color. Okay, so it says let's put the background color for the entire body. So body is this entire everything that's inside of the web browser's content is the HTML source code's body. This part from here to here. These things are not displayed as part of the web browser's content. So if you put in here a background color, then the entire page is going to be that color with some remarks. So we go style, the name of the attribute equals, and then in here we have the empty string enclosed in double quotes. So this is valid HTML. This is valid text, plain text. So the text is not a programming language, this is text. This is a programming language that's called HTML. And in here we'll put another programming language that's called CSS. So CSS has these things which are called, I don't know, it's called property. So this is a property name, and then colon, and then a property value. Control S. Again, where are you? The HTML that's inside the web browser is still the previous version of this page. So it doesn't have body, style, background, color. Where are you? Is inspect. So body still doesn't have the background color coral because we didn't load it. So now we need to take this thing and put it here. We do that with a reload button in the web browser. And now it says body, style, background color coral. And if you look at the web page, it's really coral. Okay. Back to where we were. Background color powder blue. Let's go with this. Control V, Control S. Again, let's inspect. The color is still coral inside of the web browser, so refresh again. Now the color is powder blue. This is powder blue. Okay. Or we can put background colors on different parts of the page, not on the entire page. So it says put the powder blue on H1, Control V. This is a space which I don't like, so I'm going to delete it, Control S. The space was here, this space, between body and the greater than. So if I see spaces in the wrong place, I delete them, which is, this is the wrong place to have spaces, Control S. Okay, so now H1 will have the background powder blue, and the P, which we don't have one yet, should have the background color tomato. Control C, space, Control V. So again, this thing is valid HTML, but this thing is another programming language which is called CSS, Cascading Style Sheets. HTML means hypertext markup language. Okay, we go, the file is not yet saved on the disk. So if you go inspect, H1 is still not background color powder blue. So we can refresh. But then this P still is not style background color tomato, because the web browser took this file from the hard disk, read its content, and it loaded it in the web browser. But the content of the file was wrong because we did not save the file. You can see this asterisk in here. So what we see in here was not saved to the hard disk. So the web page, so a.html on the hard disk does not have this part. Just inside of the web text editor, which is named Kate, it has this part. So with saving, we take what's inside Kate, the text editor, and put on the hard disk in the file a.html. So save. Now we have no more asterisk in here. And if you go refresh, now P is style background color tomato. So just H1 is background color powder blue, and the poem is background color tomato. Okay. So this was background color, which is for the bounding rectangle. Where are we? So right click, inspect. So we see that H1 is a rectangle. So this thing is a rectangle which has padding 0, 0, 0, and then has a margin of 21.44, which is not colored in any way. This, if I hover over the margin, over the 21.44, in the human readable version, it's shown as yellowish. If I don't hover, it's shown as white. If I hover, yellowish, not white. Hover, yellowish. Don't hover, white. Okay, so the margin and top margin and bottom margin of the heading 1 don't have any background color, so they inherit the parent's background color, which is white. But then the border doesn't have any color, and it's size 0. But then the padding, which is 0, and the actual content, which is 947 pixels width and 45 pixels height, will have powder blue. So this whole rectangle will have powder blue inside. Okay. The same for the poem. Inspect. So this says it's a P, style background color tomato. And again, the P is in fact a rectangle with sizes 9, 4, 7 and 23 with margin 16, top and bottom. The margin is not colored. If I hover over the 16, it's colored with yellowish. Border is not colored and zero size. Padding is zero size, but the rectangle of the content is with the color tomato. So 947 pixels by 23 pixels is a rectangle and it's background color tomato, this thing. And now if we change the color, that's the front color, which means the color of the fonts. So we can go like here, mirror edit, color. So it's powder blue and what's okay with powder blue, green, and then semicolon. Click outside, and now the heading 1 is foreground color green, which means that the fonts are green color, and background color powder blue, which means that the rectangle is powder blue. Okay. This styles the color of the a220c1b, which means it puts color on the fonts. This font is blue, this font is red. Foreground color blue, foreground color red. And if we don't like the fonts, we could use other font families. So for H1, we could go with font family, colon, what family? Sans. So it's sans right now. No, it's serif. Yes. Where are you? Serif, Ctrl S. So serifs are with this, so lowercase I, for instance, has these vertical lines, 1, 2, 3 vertical lines. T has horizontal lines, so I has one horizontal line to the left, one to the left bottom, one to the left to the right bottom. H has one horizontal line top left, one top bottom, another one top bottom, the left bottom, so two left bottom, one left, one right bottom, and one left top. And T has two vertical lines, top left and top right, and two horizontal lines, bottom left and bottom right. That's serif. Serif means an embellishment over the font, serif. And sans serif means no embellishments on the font, which makes them look more simpler. The fonts are simpler with sans and more complicated with serif. There are some people which write by hand like this. There's 0 people which write by hand like this. Nobody actually does 2 vertical lines for uppercase T. It's way too complicated, way too many embellishments for the handwriting, but this is okay for handwriting. A ton of people write by hand a uppercase T with just 2 lines, the horizontal line and the vertical one. Okay. What else? Courier is monospaced. the CSS properties called font family, Control S, and let's not forget the trailing semicolon for the CSS source code. So this is a CSS source code, so always put semicolons even if when they're not necessary. So in here it's not necessary, but it's a good practice to put them anyway. Control S, refresh, and now the poem is monospaced. So what does monospace mean? Means that an I, lowercase I, takes just as much space as an uppercase M. So a lowercase I is the narrowest possible character, and an uppercase M is the widest possible character. This is not monospaced, so I is really so M, uppercase M, is like 5 times as wide as a lowercase I. So lowercase I is very narrow, and uppercase M is very wide. This is not monospaced. Whereas this is monospaced, where an I and an M have the same width. If I select them, the white rectangle selection rectangle will be the same width with an uppercase M or a lowercase I. That's what monospaced fonts are, and monospaced fonts are usually for terminals like this. Okay. Font size is can be specified in many ways. We can specify it in pixels, in percents, in ems, in other 3 possible units. So you can see that this font has 300% and this font is 100% normal. Let's make them both 160. Control S, where are you? Run. And now they both have the same height, the H1 and P. So 160% the normal font size. So this would be the normal size. Run. And this is twice the normal size. Okay, this is 10 times the normal size. That's CSS property font size. Text alignment. Okay, so this is another programming language which is called CSS. When you want to style either the rectangle or the font, then the go-to place is CSS. You start learning CSS and you apply it either with style attribute for just a HTML element, or you can apply it to all H5s in the document, in the source code, to all P's, to the entire body. So you can apply styles for more than just one HTML element. So style attribute, background color, color font family, font size, font align. Okay. There's tags which I don't use, which apply style to fonts. So in order to make it bold, strong, which is kind of the same thing as bold, italic to incline it, EM, kind of the same thing, or make it bold or something. Small to be not 100% size as normal, deleted to be, I don't know, strike through or something. superscript and subscript. If you want to say square meters, you go M and then superscript 2. This is bold. This is strong, which is the same thing as bold, usually. I and EM. I is just italic. EM is italic. Small is less than 100%. This thing. This is 100%. This is not 100%, maybe 80% or something. Mark, I've never used, don't use it. Del, I've never used, don't use it. Ins, I've never used. Sub, yeah, you sometimes can't get away without sub. You need to have subscript or superscript, like M and then square. Okay. Then square meter. Okay. So if you can use style, so CSS instead of this, do use style. But sometimes the fact that a part of the text is bold or italic is really, really important semantically. Like sometimes you want to have things like let me have an extra sample. Like maybe you have a document. Where is it? You have a document, and the entire document, whenever there's a file, you always have it italic. So, for instance, you could have something like this. Create a new file named, and in here you put the file name, like I don't know, /tmp/ start normal.sh. Make it have the content and then some pre. Okay. So sometimes the fact that this string is italic is really important semantically, and you don't want to say it's okay for you to style TMP start normal any way you want. But that thing is really a file path. Or maybe you use bold for elements that exist inside of your application's graphical user interface. So you want to say something like go to the start menu, file, and then new tab. You want to say go to the, and then you really want to go bold or something, or EM. The applications main menu. This. You need to escape this one, right? And GT like this, and then you go File and GT. What was it? New tab. And then you end the EM. And then you run. EM, not EM. Strong. Okay. So you have a document, for instance, where all of the strings that appear in a GUI. So you make, for instance, a document, an HTML page, which tells people how to use the text editor Kate, right? And all of the elements that appear in the Kate graphical user interface, like file, save copy as, reload all, should be bold. And then all file names should be italic. So the way to do it is either you always use strong for strings which appear in the Kate's graphical user interface, and I for file names or file paths, or you will create a special HTML tag that you have styled with CSS and for strings that appear in the graphical user interface of Kate, and another special HTML tag, HTML element, which is for file paths and file names. And then you style all of that, all of the occurrences of that HTML element globally once with CSS. So not as attribute inside of here, but inside of the head HTML element of the HTML document. You will see how to do that when you learn about CSS. Okay. What else? So I've never used block quote queue, ABR, address site, or BDO. You know they exist. You will learn about them when you need them. I've never had a use for those. Okay. When you need them, look up the HTML syntax for them and use them. Okay, comment tags really important. So if you don't like the fact that you have a H5 and you say, I know the name or the title of the H5, the title of the text of the paragraph, the text of the heading 5, but I'm not going to show it until I have content for the chapter H5. So I'm going to leave it commented for now. Why should I have a title for a chapter if the chapter doesn't have content? I'm going to put the content for the chapter 5, and then I'm going to decomment or comment out, uncomment this H5. So if I refresh, now heading 5 has disappeared. What's commented out is as it does not exist. It doesn't take part in deciding how the human readable version of the file exists. This is called commenting out. So something that was part of the human readable format, so it created things in the human readable format of the page. Now it doesn't create because it's commented out, and we commented out with less than exclamation point, exclamation mark, and then minus minus. and we end this thing with minus minus greater than. So this is the start of the HTML tag, and this is the end of the HTML tag. It's the HTML comment tag. Okay. If we uncomment, so this is called commenting or commenting out. Now it's not available, and commenting and uncommenting is to delete the comments. So it delete the HTML comment tag. We save again, refresh, and now there's a heading 5 back again. Okay. There's two styles of two usages for comments. Either to say something is happening in the next line or in the next lines, or to take a large chunk of HTML like this or like this and temporarily disable it. So this is commenting out code. What I do now. And this is adding comments to code, which is doc strings, or this is me adding a comment to the code. Below are all the headings. Okay, and then we can have a pair to this comment, which is in here, which says, now we are done with all the headings. So I start comment and an end comment. Okay, so this entire thing is documented, has a documentation which says we have a H1 to H6 from now after this comment line, and this other comment line is the end documentation which says, okay, so either you comment out a block of code, or you say something is going to happen from now on, or you say something has happened above this comment line. Okay, so in here it comments out this P. If we envelop it with less than exclamation mark minus minus and then minus minus greater than. We can comment out a single HTML element or more. Great for debugging HTML. You can comment out lines of code one at a time until you stop having errors, for instance. Okay. Next, HTML colors. So these are, I don't know, CSS colors or something, tomato, orange. And then HTML supports 140 standard color names. Wow, did not know about them. Alice Blue, Antique White, Aquamarine. Okay, so a way to specify colors is by their one color names, so HTML color names 140, or with this syntax. So hash and then 6 hexadecimals. So a hexadecimal digit starts from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then continues with A, B, C, D, E, F. So from 0 to F are hexadecimal digits. Okay, so this color, let's see what this color is. What's this? style, which is an HTML attribute, color, and then this thing for h6. Control S, refresh. So heading 6 is what? Why doesn't this seem to work? Control S. A. Control S, refresh. Large RGB. I know. CSS, color, hexadecimal, hex colors. How do you do hex colors in CSS? That's exactly what I did. So I did H6, which is this thing. And then I go style. Whoa, mama. Okay, so this was style, not style. So an L was missing. Okay. Control S, refresh. So now it's a gray. And where are you? Alice blue is this thing. Control C. Control V, Control S. And it's a really dim gray. What about aqua? Copy. Control V, Control S, refresh. So this is aqua. So colors, you can specify them with the HTML name. Control S and refresh. Aqua. QUA. Control S, refresh. So this is the HTML name, aqua. Or you can go with the hexadecimal. That's with hash mark, paste, Control S, refresh. This thing. Or with RGB, like this. RGB. Let's make this 2. Control S, refresh. So it's a magenta. What does this thing do is RGB, so red, green, blue. Red is almost 255, which is the maximum. Blue is 255, which is the maximum. So maximum red plus maximum blue is magenta. And 2 is almost minimum. The minimum is 0. So from 0 to 255, which is 1 byte. 8 bits of color. So G is almost 0, which is green. If you want, I know, green and what other possible color? RGB. Green and red, that's brown. So 255 and 255. So red 255 maximum, green 255 maximum, no blue. This should be brown. Red, green, blue. It's not brown. Red and green. Red and green seems to be yellow. Okay. Okay, so the color names you can specify in 3 ways: with HTML names, with hexadecimal, or with the RGB 3 pair. Okay. background colors, put the color on the rectangle, foreground color, put the color on the font, like this. You can have a border color. You see border, the border exists by default, but it's 0 pixels, so it's invisible. And then you can put more than one attribute on a CSS property. You can put more values. Let's see this. Control C on this thing, Control V, Control S, refresh. So we specify that the border is 2 pixels, is solid, could be, I don't know, dashed or dotted. Again, this is CSS, you need to learn CSS, and tomato is the color. Color values RGB, hash, I don't know what HSL is. There's HSLA with A being transparency. Okay. Okay, what else? RGB. Enough colors for now. Next. Hex colors, next. Saturation, hue, saturation, lightness, next. HTML styles, so CSS stands for cascading style sheets. You can either put your style on one HTML element or on all HTML elements of a type. For instance, all H1s, all A's, all P's, all A's of class something, all elements with the attribute ID something. Format the layout of a web page. Color, font, size of text, spacing between elements, background image, background color. Cascading means that you can apply the color, one color in here, so for just this P, another color for all of the P's, another color for the entire body, and the color which is applied for just this P takes priority. If all P's have one color specified and body has another color specified as foreground color, then for this P will be displayed in the color of all P's because that's more specific. It has priority over the style that's applied to the entire body, and the text of A will have the color specified in the style of the body because there's no foreground colors set for this A or for all of the A's. So that's what cascading means. As you near towards the place such as this text, you ask yourself what foreground color will it have? From here, from here, from all of the A's, from all of the A's specified inside of the head, for all of the A's specified in an external CSS file. If you set the foreground color of body to blue, everything inside will be blue. So either with the style attribute inside each individual HTML element, internal, inside of the head you have a style, head, style, we close the style, and we go the color, aubergine. Everything. Control S, refresh. No, not. Red. What did I do wrong? So it has, we're not inside of head. So inside of head, we have a style. We didn't specify any selector. So it's not enough for us to have CSS property colon value. We also need a selector to say we want to apply this color to what? To the entire body. Okay. So we go body, which is a selector, and then CSS, valid CSS. Control S. Okay, so now everything's tomato. Aubergine does not exist. Tomato does exist. It offers auto-completion. Whoa. Lowercase. Red is lowercase. Control S, refresh. Okay. What about powder? Powder blue. Yeah, it knows that. Control S. Refresh. Refresh. So everything is powder blue now. Let's make everything red. Okay. But let's say that we want to have two paragraphs. So we have P para 1, we close the P, and then P para 2, and then we close the P. Control S, refresh. Here are the two paragraphs. So they inherit the color from body. And now we say selector P, so all of the P's should have color blue. Okay, Control S. And now this P, where does it get the foreground color from? It's a P. Does P have a style? Yes, P does have a style. It should be blue. Okay, should it inherit styles from somewhere else? Inside of here, there's no HTML attribute. Does body have a style? Yes, body is red. Okay, so P has more priority than body because it's closer to this text. So this P is closer to this text than this body. Okay, and then the last trick is to use the two more precise selectors which are not HTML element name. Where are you? Which is class and ID. So let's say that this is class important paragraphs. Control S. Both two paras have the same style, the same foreground color. But what if we put a foreground color on this what's classes? I don't know. Mark. Color Okay, so the selector for classes is dot. So I say all of the paragraphs that are class important paragraphs, could be one, could be none, could be some. For instance, now we have two such paragraphs, the para one and the poem, are more important than the others. So that means that they should be black and they should be bold. Let's see if we can do that. Font, font weight, bold. Ctrl S, refresh. Yeah, so all of the important paragraphs, the two ones, are now bold and black. Okay. Hyperlinks, URL and then text, URL and then text. You can navigate to the top of the page. Let's have such a thing. Ctrl C. At the very last line we have go to top. And no image, no alternate. And the href is the special one, which is called underscore top. Ctrl S, refresh, and now I can navigate to the top. Let's target. Href, what dot, and target equals underscore top. Let's see. No, it navigates to the directory. Okay, what else? Relative URLs. So this is absolute URL. You can paste it in any web browser and it will work correctly. This is relative URLs, so it says that in the same directory where a.html exists, there exists a file HTML images. Images.html. HTML images. Ctrl S, refresh. There's no such file images.html in this directory. Let's create it. Shift F4, images.html, one image, the second image. So it's a plain text file, and plain text files are valid HTML. Ctrl S, Ctrl W, back. And now if I click, it navigates to this page, images.html from the same directory. Okay, and relative would be if I go like this, /images, or if I go with slash, then it searches in the root directory of this website, which would be this. This is the root directory. So if I go, this thing will navigate to this URL. Ctrl V. So it navigates up, 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 until it finds this thing, which is the special root directory, which is this guy. After w3schools.com, this first slash, this is the root directory. And then this CSS default ASP is this CSS default ASP. Okay, back. Image as a link, we did that. So inside of an A, you have an image, and then you close the A. email address with a special URL protocol mail to. If you have button on click, it navigates somewhere. It says document allocation equals something. This is a JavaScript event, and this is a JavaScript source code. But for that, we need to do the JavaScript tutorial. Okay. And you can navigate to elements inside of your own page if you define them. Okay, links have a certain default color in your web browser. This blue in Firefox. You can change the color of URLs. This, you put it inside of your style section inside of your head. So now all visited links are pink and all other links are green. So I have visited these links someday today, and now it's green. I have visited this and it's green. If it's not visited, it's if it's visited, it's pink. Okay, let's visit it. Control S, refresh, navigate to it, back. It doesn't work as I guessed. All links are green, visited ones are pink. It doesn't work for some reason. Okay. What else? Inside of the HTML, you can have a ID, and then you can navigate to it. So let's do that. So let's have a let's navigate to the poem. So ID equals poem, Control S, refresh. And now if I go # poem, it jumps to the poem. So without the hash mark, it goes at the beginning of the HTML page. With poem, it goes it scrolls the page a.html, the human readable version of the page. It scrolls it as much as possible, such that the poem is visible. I scroll up as much as possible. I click. I scroll up as much as possible. I go in the address bar. I go enter, and it scrolls as down as much as possible, such that the poem is visible. I did this thing. Okay. ID allows you to put a place where the web browser can navigate to, this thing, and it navigates by having a different URL, which is the name of the file, and then hash mark, and then the name of the ID, the string that's the value of this ID HTML attribute. HTML images, we did this. Okay, we did a ton of things with images. If you want to do something with images, look it up. Image maps, I've never used that. Background images, I'm not really sure it works. Picture, I don't know what it is. Favicon, a really recommended thing to have, which is this icon that appears in tabs. So for instance, this tab doesn't have any icon, so it should have. So you do it like this. So inside of the head, you have a link, rel icon. You look it up. When you want to have an icon in your tab, then you look up fav icon. This thing, favorite icon. Control S, refresh. Nothing to show in here, no icon. But we can go. Let's put that image that we have. So static, and then whatever is in here. Shift F2, Control C, Control V. That's not a recommended way to do. You should not put a JPG in here. You should put an icon. But still, the correct image is displayed in the tab of the browser. Okay. Having a fav icon is not an easy thing to do. It requires knowledge. You need to learn for a day in order to create the correct fav icon for your website. HTML tables. This is an HTML table. You define it with the tag table. This is table row. This is table header cell, table header cell, table header cell, table row, table cell, table cell, table cell, table row, table cell, table cell, table cell. Control V, Control S, refresh. So this is how a table looks like. There's no line separators because those are size 0. Exist but have size 0. So for instance, this cell, Germany, has a border 0, has a margin 0. Margin size 0. So let's make it margin size, where are you, border? Let's make it 1. Border width. Okay. And border style solid. So now you have your cell with a rectangle around it. So you set 1 pixel, the width of the line, and should be solid, not something else, like dotted. Okay, so now it's dotted. Okay, tables. Let's go with lists, and that's it. We have a border 1 pixel solid black with CSS. Table sizes, you put sizes on the style, on the table to take up the entire. So in here, the table doesn't take the entire width of the page. You can go table style width 100%, so it will stretch the width of the table to the entire width of the page. You can have one row take 70% and the rest take the rest 15-15. So size of rows. Okay, and lists. That's the last thing that we'll cover. This is a list. Control V, Control S, refresh. So this is a bullet list, so unnumbered list. which UL means unnumbered list, and what was the other thing? Numbered list is OL for ordered list. So it's 1, 2, 3. If you want 1, 2, 3, you go with OL. If you want just bullet points, no necessary order between the elements in the list, then you go unnumbered list, UL. Control S and refresh. Okay, ordered list OL. All items start with list item, so LI is list item, doesn't matter if the list is numbered or not. The list or ordered or not, the list is items or the list cells are HTML element LI, list item. So it starts with the start tag, end tag, and content. This entire thing is the LI HTML element. And this is the UL, unnumbered list, unordered list HTML element. Okay, this is ordered. Okay. Unordered list UL. And if you don't want this circle, you can put other types of bullet points. Control S, refresh. So this is a disk, or you could have a circle. Control S. So this is a bullet point that's empty. You can have squares, you can have nothing. You can put an ordered list inside of an unordered list, an ordered list inside of an ordered list, etc. So inside of a list item, the list item HTML element has a content which can contain text, but also can contain other things like an unnumbered list, an image, a which is a link. You can make the text, the list be horizontal, not vertical. So this could be useful for creating a navigation menu. It has events for on hover, so where you have LI, which means list item. This is a list item. Home is a list item. When you hover on it, so means hover, then it changes the background color to be a darker 111. If not, the color is a bit lighter, which is this 333. The unnumbered list, entire unnumbered list, has the background color 333. But when you hover over a cell, LI list item, then the background of that cell becomes 111, which is darker black, a darker gray. Okay, so that was it. Thank you.